What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Walkout Podcast, where we cover fights, news, and more. And today we're doing the second part of our last video, a year in review of 2025 in the UFC, where we go through every single main card and give our thoughts and opinions about the fights. So if you haven't seen that last video, make sure to check that out. But enough about that. Where are we starting today?
One of the most impressive fights of the year. We have Alex Pereira taking back his belt versus Magomed Ankalaev in the what do you say in the sequel, the rematch is what you
Exactly.
call it.
Yeah.
And yeah, do you just want to take it away on this one because
Yeah.
this one was incredible.
Sure. I mean, what a moment. The one that the UFC were definitely hoping for, and a lot of us fans were hoping for,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you need some exciting fighters, and there's nothing wrong with admitting that, and that you do find a striker like Alex Pereira, one of the greatest strikers that we've seen in the UFC ever, actually put someone out and do it in this style. Because when we predicted this, I do remember saying that I bought into a bit of the thought that Pereira was injured in the first fight and then was holding it back, but I didn't think that it was gonna be this. I mean, it was a total contrast to the first fight, but just such a needed moment for the division, I think, because there wasn't even any talk of a trilogy. Otherwise, that's the natural thing. But after this fight, Pereira and the UFC were clear on the fact that no, we're on to bigger and better things after this. Maybe a heavyweight fight or something else spectacular, and they don't want anything to do with Ankalaev anymore. So, yeah, amazing scenes when Alex Pereira knocked out Ankalaev after like a bit of a minute and a bit. It was insane. But I almost don't feel like we need to talk too much about it because everyone knows that no matter how little or much you watch the UFC, you've seen this amazing moment. Um, but what I do want to bring a bit of light to, and I think maybe you can take this one, but Merab doing his third title defense in the beginning of October against Corsanda again. I mean, that's just crazy, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, this was really insane, and just this is probably, if we were talking about earlier, about how Merab surprised basically everyone by submitting Sean O'Malley, then of course this was maybe not the exact same thing. I mean, he didn't, of course he won by a decision, 5 round decision, of course, so it wasn't like any unexpected knockout or submissioner. But I do remember during this fight that Merab actually had improved a lot. At least it looked like in his striking, and he was putting a lot of pressure early on Corey Sandhagen, and like by the third round, he almost knocked him out. From what I remember, he didn't
Yep.
he didn't get. I don't think he got like a, what do you say, like a formal knockdown, or like a
No, no.
statistic knockdown, but it almost looked like it. He would
He
basically
did
had him
wobble him, right?
or yeah, he did wobble him, exactly. That was I was going for. He did wobble him. He put a lot of pressure in on him, which we hadn't seen before. We hadn't seen Merab go for the striking that clearly before. And so for me, even though this wasn't the same, type of Merab hype fight that maybe the O'Malley fight was, with a lot of new people going like, "Oh my God, this is, he's just hit a new level." For me, this was at least a new sort of another side of Merab, maybe a more technical side, or a more calculated side, especially when he started ramping up the pressure later, when he saw that he needed to, just put on the gas essentially, and he kept. And mostly also, I think that what was more surprising about this, I think we were talking about this beforehand, if he was going to slow down in this fight or not,
Mm.
and he just didn't at all. He actually like he actually, I think he landed or tried. Of course, it didn't go. Or it went further. It went 2 rounds more. But I think still that he averaged like more takedowns and more strikes in this fight than he did versus O'Malley. He was even more active in the little time that they fought. So
Yeah.
just putting up, he basically put up the same amount of activity like he did versus Umar in that fight, and that was a 5 rounder as well. But that was a year earlier almost. So I think it was really impressive, his winner. And then, of course, we had which we'll get to later, when Merab lost the belt versus Jan. And then maybe you could talk about it being more about, I don't know, Merab gassing out more. But I just remember watching this fight and then, hearing Jan versus Merab getting announced and thinking that immediately just, okay, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if anyone can beat Merab right now.
No,
And I don't
because
think anyone imagined him losing at all, right? And then,
no,
yeah,
exactly. It was just exactly like that. You couldn't, because at this point, I know we keep going on about this like a broken record, but he'd beaten O'Malley twice, Sandhagen, Peter Yan before, Umar, Cejudo,
yeah,
Aldo, everyone, everyone in the division, and then some, right? And what I don't think we can underestimate the value of is the fact that beating Corey Sandhagen, a lot of people would say, but Corey is worse than Umar or Corey is worse than O'Malley. Yeah, might be true, but they are completely different fighters. And we've seen it time
yeah,
and time again, when someone loses to someone and then beats someone else, what I'm trying to say is MMA math isn't really working a lot of the time. So
yeah,
for Merab to go out and collect these different wins, it is incredibly impressive. I don't think you should brush it off just because he was a big favorite. And Korsendhagen maybe isn't what he once was, but he's still a very, very technical and smart fighter. And he knew damn well when he got this title shot to make the most of it. And he did at times look very good, Sandhagen. But Merab looked better, and Merab did enough to neutralize him. And to then, like you said, the most badass thing ever, to knock on the door of Dana White the day after and say, "Give me another fight before the end of the year. I want to break the record." I don't really care about the result in the Patreon fight, to be honest. The fact that he took it, won those three first, and took one in December, I mean, it's just spectacular, right? Give the guy all the credit in the world. Um,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, he looked so complete. That's the main thing about this fight. Like you mentioned, Corey Sandhagen is a completely different style of fighter than O'Malley or Umar, and it's just that he fought all of those guys in the space of one year and looked, complete against all of them basically, and even more so, with every fight and at the age that he was, at the age that he is right now. I think he's like, what is it, 30? He's 44.
yeah,
So I don't know. I just remember, the hype was probably, or at least the respect. The respect was probably at its highest right now, or then, for Merab.
yeah,
And then we had, of course, Jiri Prohaska's latest fight in the UFC against Khalil Rountree. This was a really good fight, um, as well, and he knocked him out in the third round. And I remember, I think that it was this fight when, Khalil Rountree, he was basically bossing the fight for the first two rounds,
yeah.
and Jiri wasn't doing basically that much. It was a really weird sort of fight. He was just, slowly going forward and getting hit over and over, and then backing off and then going in again and getting hit. But he wasn't really landing anything.
Without the guard, by the
And
way, with his hands by
yeah, without
by
the
his
guard,
sides.
like usual. So he's absorbed so many shots, I remember, from Khalil Rountree, and was still standing, which is really impressive. And then he just unleashed at the end of it. For the entire third round, it just started and he just didn't stop. And it just ended with him knocking out Khalil in one of the most impressive, I don't know, what do you say it, waves, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
That,
Because he would have lost on the
so
decision probably. So
yeah, probably on the scorecards if he didn't pick up the activity. So really impressive win from Jiri, and we'll see what he has coming up next, eventually.
yeah, but so glad to see him obviously take this year. Two great wins.
Yeah,
Um, and to stop Roundtree, even though like you said, the first two rounds were not that great, but to stop a guy like Khalil Roundtree is one of the toughest guys. We saw how much struggle Pereira had with him to just get him out of there. Even if he maybe at times isn't the best technical fighter, Khalil Roundtree, he's one of the toughest in my opinion. And for Yuri to put him out like that, I think that will put fear into everyone in the light heavyweight division, apart from possibly Alex Pereira. But we'll see, like you said,
yeah, pretty-
now in 2026, what's next for Yuri. But very impressive, of course. Um, moving on then to another. very highly anticipated event that unfortunately disappointed a lot. UFC 321. I remember us watching this one together. I was so hyped for this. And then Cyril Gahn, in the words of Thomas Bernal, used his eyes like a bowling ball. Um, do you remember your reaction to this?
Yeah, I mean, I almost didn't get what was going on. It was so crazy. I mean, it
Yeah.
should have just been. I don't get how Gon didn't get punished for it. Also,
No, it should have been a
still hasn't
DQ. I
been
remember us
punished.
screaming
Still hasn't
that.
been
Yeah.
any word. Yeah,
It's just such a
no,
crazy
I mean,
situation, but and I'm a bit tired. I'm gonna. You went on a no, it didn't really. You said that you weren't, but um, going for a rant on the Drickus fight. But I'm gonna go on a
yeah,
small little rant here with the fact
yeah,
that people said that Cyril Gahn, because I don't know if we addressed this fight. I don't think we did, but that Cyril Gahn was jabbing him and stuff like that. Uh, the bar
yeah.
for what's considered success against Tom Aspinall is ridiculously high. Cyril Gahn was jabbing, landing a few jabs on Tom Aspinall. I, I don't remember the rule that says that that wins you a fight, but yeah, he landed a few jabs. Yeah, Tom had a bit of a nosebleed, but at the end of the round before the eye poke, the last eye poke that is, because he had several, Cyril Gahn, he looked like he was gassing. He looked tired, and that's when he pulled out the eye
Yeah.
poke. To say it's in some way like Cyril Gahn was doing well, was he though? I mean, he was ranked the number one heavyweight. Shouldn't he be able to land a few jabs on Tom Aspinall? What are people expecting? And I still thought that Tom Aspinall would have smoked him come round two, round three. And when they hopefully fight again, I will back Tom Aspinall all the way. But I mean, that's probably the only good thing about this fight is the fact that we have a match that we want to see because now we have a bit of bad blood as well. Cyril Gahn can be a bit of a villain, and Tom Aspinall has this like I don't know if you've seen, but this like bully Tom he calls it something like that personality now, where
Yeah,
it's no like no more
probably. Yeah,
Mr. Nice Guy,
yeah, number
and
9. Mr. Nice. Yeah,
exactly. So and that's not what you want to hear. So interesting. Another thing that I think was a positive is another fight, of course, that we watched on the main card here to highlight. I'm gonna jump down a few spots because I don't think it was that spectacular with the Umar win, a solid win against Bautista, but pretty uneventful. But then the Volkov versus Almeida fight, which I thought was really interesting because I remember when we sat and scored this one with all of Almeida's control time, and we thought that it was going to get the win because that's how he usually scores it. And maybe this was one off, but I saw a lot of people afterwards saying that they thought Volkov clearly won because of damage, but he was controlled a lot of the time. But of course, Volkov got, I think it was a 2-1 decision here from all three judges, pretty much. And I really like to see that personally because I think it's time that we do actually reward damage over control time. So even this, though this was just a undercard fight, it perhaps can set a trend for the year to come in terms of decision because most fans, I do think, do want striking to be held, I suppose, a bit higher than control time. Do you agree with that,
yeah.
or?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it has to be even more just standardized in terms of they need to make sure that damage is what's getting rewarded and not control. Like we saw versus, Drickus and Hamzat
Yeah,
in terms of, just 5 rounds of control time. We can't let that be the standard for a UFC main event, and then the UFC are never gonna get any sort of traction in the future if those guys can dominate the divisions with just control time. It's not going to be entertaining for anyone to watch. Even I think the guys who say that they like wrestling and whatever, you can like wrestling. I mean, I can respect wrestling. I can respect when someone gets a nice takedown or someone suplexes someone or get a nice submission. That's the one thing. What I
yeah,
don't really like to see is someone just lying on top of the other guy for 5 rounds just because they can. Of course, it's technical. Of course, you know they know how to manage. Um, like what's it called? Like body physics or anatomy or stuff like that.
Yeah,
They know how to manage their top position to keep the other guy down. But even if it's really heavy and it's very strong, but still it can be impressive, but that doesn't mean that it's good, or anything. So I definitely think that we need to make damage the golden standard, not just strikes even, because there's also some strikers, like if we're gonna say take for example, Strickland, who just jabs or jab and tip,
yeah, yeah,
his way through fights and doesn't really commit that much to either making that much damage. And so I think that you can't also reward, you know, too many strikers who are just basically point was almost like fencing, like point striking, just jabbing to get one more significant strike or something to close out a decision win. I think damage has to be what the UFC has to go for in the future in terms of scoring. Um, I
definitely.
mean, the counter argument there will maybe be like, well, that would put a lot more that would put a lot more a lot more danger to the fighters, because then fighters are gonna maybe like they maybe then they're gonna prioritize head punches and kicks to the head rather than to like the body or to the knee or to the legs, because it's harder to maybe spot, I don't know, to judge damage in those areas. But
Possibly, but also
I,
on the other hand,
yeah,
this is what you sign up to. If you want to be a
yeah,
professional wrestler, you can go and practice that. But if you want to fight MMA, don't be mad when people start mixing the arts. But I
yeah,
totally agree with what you said there, by the way, and I get that you're just playing devil's advocate. That's what some people might say, and also an argument is just what I just said, that it is MMA, so I can mix the martial arts. I don't have to be a striker. I can be a wrestler, and of course, there's nothing wrong by that through the rules. But don't be upset if you don't get a decision, even though you think you've controlled the fight. Basically, is what we're getting at here.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and speaking of control time, we had UFC 322, where Islam Makhachev went up against Jack Della Maddalena and claimed that welterweight title in pretty dominant fashion. What were your thoughts about this fight?
I mean, I think this is basically, I mean, it's different from the Dricus Hamzat fight in the way that it's a lot more. I think it's a lot more. There was at least a lot more opportunity for striking in this fight, and think that Jack didn't really go for it sometimes enough. Um, when you compare it, when you compare to the Hamzat, versus Dricus, then Hamza took basically every opportunity to just get on top of him and just stay there
Yeah,
for basically the entirety of several rounds. While in this fight, at least, I mean, I could sort of give Islam a bit of a pass in that you're up against Jack de la Maddalena, and Jack de la Maddalena, his main strength really is, his boxing, his striking, and he's so clean. So you almost have to, go for the takedown. But even then, I thought that, there was a lot of moments when in this fight when Jack could have pushed on further, at least try to create some kind of opportunity for doing damage, and he just didn't. And he wasn't moving enough as well either.
yeah,
And Islam was just basically opening up increasingly as the rounds went on, just further and further in terms of getting easier takedowns. And I don't know, I think this is more to do with the UFC than to do with the fighters themselves. And yeah, but I can't call it a good fight, though. It wasn't a good fight at all. You can say
no,
that it's, yeah, of course there's skill on display, and this is it's better definitely than Dricus versus Hamzat, but it's still not it's still not what a UFC it's not what a UFC main event should be for a fight for a title. I think we have to commit to some kind of rule change maybe in the future. I don't know, that just limits basically time on the ground. Either
yeah,
if you're not
just stand
advanced
them
from
up.
position, or if yeah, exactly, you stand them up after some time, and then if you get another takedown, then great, have some more points, because I'm all for the takedowns. I don't think that's a problem. Being able to get takedowns and doing wrestling moves, that is really impressive, and it also is entertaining when you do it, in over and over again. like Merab can do, for example. But if you're just getting a takedown and just get on top for control time,
Yeah.
then I think we need to really make sure that they're not just staying in the same position for several minutes. Otherwise, it just gets really boring fast. And yeah, well, enough said that for me. Maybe you have something to add here in terms of what you thought on this fight.
Not really. I mean, there's a lot to say, sorry, of course, but you covered most of it, and I totally agree with that. That the skilled moment and the entertaining moment as well is when you go for the takedown, but just wet blanking someone and just laying on top of them isn't entertaining or um, particularly skillful, to be honest. If you're not, like you said, advancing, so
I
I
mean, it's a if it's a strength contest, then
yeah,
almost
yeah,
more like
exactly,
it's like a strength contest.
and
You're committing to not being able to get or being able to stop the guy from beneath from getting up, and the real thing that's stopping him is basically strength. And when you have someone that's basically, of course, it's the same weight division, so you have some guy who's the same weight as you, basically lying on top of you, then and he's also like actively pinning you down, then of course you're not going to be able to get up. I mean, it's incredibly difficult to get up if you're not super advanced, probably, jiu-jitsu or, and even then, I mean, I don't see anyone really getting up in the same positions that Islam when he gets into those, top
no,
control
because you
positions against someone
can't.
like him or Hamza. That's the problem.
Exactly that, because I've heard Mighty Mouse talk about it, and I saw a video when he
Yeah,
had a guy on top of him and just positioned him like Islam or Hamzat lays on top of you. And he said, I basically can't get out now. He tried his different moves, and
yeah,
the guy wasn't that much bigger. And he, the possibly greatest of all time, couldn't get out because you can't in that position. And when you have such a strong wrestler like Islam Makhachev or Hamzat Shemaev, it's it's not possible, and for them, it's like
yeah.
a
It's not.
free win
No.
just to lay on top of it. And fair enough, I were in their shoes, I would done the same thing. But just like you said, it's spot on. We need a rule change because we can't have this going forward. Just like you said, this you can't hype up a main event like this and have like a pound for pound to the two times champ kind of fight with this kind of promo for it to go like this. Even though I respect Islam Makhachev and his skill, make him fight because Islam can fight. To be honest, if they were striking, I would not shy away from saying that I possibly would pick Islam, even though Jack might be the most pure striker out of them. So
I mean, I think we saw that. So sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you there, but I think we saw that during this fight, that, and that is really what also stuck up for me, when you compare it to Dricus versus Hamzat, is that in that fight, as soon as they started changing a bit in the fourth round, when Dricus got up, or when the referee stood them up, then Hamza started backing off, and then immediately
yeah,
went for the takedown again. But
exactly.
in this fight, I thought that, Islam was more active in the striking than Jack was. That
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
real, Jack was so afraid, I think, of the takedowns that he just couldn't even open himself up single moment, and that did not work to his advantage. So I think this, in terms of this fight, I do really give Islam a chance, a pass for this one,
Yeah.
because I don't think that. I mean, if you see it again versus Ian Gary, sorry, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
get a bit tied on recording, but if we see it again versus Ian Gary, then
But then it's
I might think
almost, I'm sorry to
differently.
say it, I get your point, but it's almost impressive because I don't think he can do that. Jack is a bit, it's not small and it's very strong, but Ian Gary is ridiculously big
Yeah,
and has
it's
a
so
lot of range and he's an incredible striker as well. So if he can do that, props to him, but I don't think he will be able to, and I almost don't think it will be his game plan. And I think that's a very big reason for the fact that you've seen everyone basically, even though I don't like Ian Gary personally, I think he should get the title shot. But you've probably
no,
seen Islam Makhachev keeps going on about the Kamaru Usman fight because that's what the one he wants. Because what is Kamaru Usman? He's a bit smaller, he's old, and he's a wrestler. So Islam Makhachev can do the same thing again, but I really hope he doesn't, to be honest, because it's not entertaining.
yeah, exactly.
And then,
So
yeah, quickly just on this card, right? We had a few other fights that were a bit better, just to brief them off. Quick mention for Valentina Shevchenko, obviously becoming possibly the women's GOAT, defeating Weili Chang, or Zhang Weili, I believe it's Right. What did we have? Then we had obviously Michael Morales knocking out Sean Brady in round one. Incredibly impressive. Didn't see that one coming, to be honest. Um, so a lot of interesting welterweights matchup. We also had Carlos Prates knocking out Leon Edwards and Santini knocking out Dariush in 15 seconds. I mean, I almost missed this one just because it was that quick. So all in all, it was a good card, but a bit like you said with the Drickus and Hamzat one, the main event really did let it down a bit, has to be said. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, and then lastly, we have the last event of 2025 and the ESPN pay-per-view era, where Merab went up against Piotr Jan. We didn't speak that much about this fight before because we were very, very certain. I mean, how shocked were you that Piotr Jan just claimed this one?
I mean, I don't know. I didn't know even what to think during the fight. I thought that, the fight when I was watching it, I thought that it felt a bit like the start maybe of like Sandhagen versus Merab when, he wasn't really in his usual, it was almost like okay, they're feeling each other out a little bit, in terms of what the limit is, what Merab can go for, what he can't go for, and then I thought that it was gonna just that it was gonna still steamroll in the later round, and it just never happened. I mean, he tried over and over again.
Yeah,
He did start going to his high activity mode, but he just couldn't get the takedowns at all against Jan. And I don't really know what changed. I don't know if it's eventually like fatigue, because you can still be you can still be really tired and try to put up high activity, and it's not going to be the same quality. You're not going to have the same strength in your muscles, maybe, or in your body, to maybe to execute the same, I don't know, the same actions like trying to get the takedowns. So, because I've seen some people basically saying that, well, he couldn't have been fatigue, he couldn't have been tired after the year or something because he still put up so much. Because I mean, I think this was maybe his most active fight in terms of the amount of strikes he threw, stuff like that,
yeah,
the amount of strikes he attempted. But I don't really buy that, because what I mean when I say that I think he was fatigued, I mean that I think it's long term just strain on his body that wasn't really sure. He can try to he can attempt a strike, but that doesn't mean that he puts the same power. He can put the same power behind it. He can try to get a takedown, but he might not be able to get as much strength into it. Basically, he might be slower, and I thought that he did look a bit slower, especially towards the end, when he got like desperate and didn't really know what to do. So, I mean, I give a lot of props. We have to talk, of course, we can't only talk about Merab here. It's just because the incredible year he had beforehand. So it was
of
such
course.
a
Yeah.
upset here. But we also have to talk about Petr Yan, and he executed, I think, a perfect game plan here. He had an incredibly solid defense in terms of takedowns. He defended. He even landed more takedowns on Merab than Merab landed on him,
Yeah,
which
who
is
would have
just
seen that coming?
incredible. Yeah, especially after that's the weird thing, especially after the first fight they had against each other, and Merab was just so incredibly dominant, and I really didn't think there was any way for Jan to win this, except for maybe Merab just either Merab getting knocked out, or completely, I don't know, being so fatigued that he couldn't do anything. But still, I don't really know what to predict if they fight again. I don't know if this is the same thing, as the Pereira versus Ankalev sort of fight, where it's just like it's not the same. Um, um, they just don't have a good night or whatever you
Yeah,
call
yeah.
it. It's not just a good fight for them.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I
I
haven't
don't
really
know
heard
because
a
it's so hard to
reason
say.
from Merab yet. Have you seen anything? Because what he said in the
No, and
post-fight
as in, yeah.
uh, interview
No,
was that
I have seen like training videos, and he's looked fine also. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. He trained
afterwards,
with Taporia now. I saw.
yeah,
Um, and but in the interviews after the fight, he said that oh, I wanted to make it entertaining, and that's why I didn't go for that many takedowns. And just like you said, I mean, I really respect Merab, but that's just not true. He went for a lot of takedowns, and he
yeah,
failed them. And like you said, PTN landed more takedowns than Merab did. So. just to get those extra points. So hard to say what went wrong. I'm glad to see that he's not too beat down of it, that he's still out living his best life and training to get better. Because to continue on what you said there, I do reckon that surely Merab is one of those guys that deserves an instant rematch if he wants it, right?
Yeah, I mean, he has to. I think he's probably still the fighter of the year for 2025 for me, and I think for the UFC as well, just because of the incredible activity and just that he is dared to take this breaking the record for amount of title fights in a year. Um, I mean it's insane. So he attempted it, and sure it didn't work out, but let's see what he does when he comes back. And of course, a lot of respect to Petrian, you know, for putting for being able to stop the machine.
Yeah,
No
to
one thought
solve
it would
an
be possible.
impossible puzzle, right?
Yeah, I mean, no one thought it would. I thought Merab looked complete. I thought that okay, he's just getting better every fight. And even though okay, maybe it's a bit early to take this next fight, I still thought that well, he looks so complete. He can do whatever he wants. He can probably fight in a 2 week, notice after the fight beforehand,
Yeah,
after Sandhagen and still win or something. And he just turns up in this fight and it just isn't the same. So I don't know exactly. It's hard to explain it. You don't want to be too. Of course, I've already said that, but you don't want to be too, you know, trying too hard to explain why Merab couldn't win this fight. But you also want to give a lot of respect to Jan. It's just hard to really to understand when you had the first fight between them, and it was so dominant for Merab,
yeah,
and it's hard to understand exactly what went down in this fight, and especially since we know that as you covered, of course Merab he deserves probably an immediate rematch, and then you're gonna have a trilogy, and you really want to know what to think before the third fight, and I really don't know. I don't know what to actually think
no, hard
before
one to predict
at
that
least
one. Yeah, really
yeah,
difficult.
exactly. Um, it's really difficult, but it's still is an. I thought it was still. I guess it depends on what you think about Merab or not. I still thought it was an entertaining fight because both guys were trying to go at least for it
Yeah,
quite a lot, even though maybe Jan was more defending. I Merab put up a valiant effort, and they at least exchange a lot. It's not maybe on the same level of course, as a Van versus Royval type of striking matchup, but still it did bring some I think good moments during this fight, and
yeah,
have to respect Jan as well as a champ. So
yeah,
good fight,
definitely.
I think. Good card to end the year, also on an upset at least. And also, of course, we weren't done with this card. Almost speaking prematurely here, but we also had another incredible upset here, who also a lot of people didn't really predict. But there's another reason for this that we're gonna get into, and you can take it away on this one. Joshua Van versus Alexander Pantoja.
Yeah, I have some strong feelings here. I got a bit
Yeah,
triggered, to be honest, with people celebrating, and I get that Joshua Van celebrates because he's come from pretty difficult backgrounds by everything I've understood, and he
yeah,
gets a lot of money
yeah.
from
He's
this.
from Burma, I think so.
Exactly. And, very wholesome after this. He would, like, call his mom up and bought her a house and stuff like that. I mean, it's amazing to see. I'm very happy for him. I honestly am. And as you mentioned previously, when we talked about his fight against Rival, he's an incredibly entertaining fighter, and he's very young. And if I was in the same shoes and as good as fighting as he is, I would probably be very arrogant as well. So I'm not going to blame him for that. But what I don't really like is when people act like he went out there and knocked out Pantoja. Because I know the argument is, I'm pretty sure he catched the kick right from Pantoja. But if you know anything about MMA, you can't argue that Joshua Van had any clue about the fact that there was a chance that
No,
Pantoja would land on
no.
his elbow. That's just cap. I'm sorry. So a freak injury, it is bad to
It's
make.
like when
Yeah.
Connor broke his leg, I think, versus
Yeah, versus
Dustin
Poirier,
Poirier
right? Yeah, but the
back
difference there,
back in the day.
yeah, it's exactly the same kind of injury. Yeah, a freak injury, but the difference there is most of us knew that Poirier would have smoked him. either way. He was smoking him before that.
Yeah,
He
he
would have
would have
smoked him
won.
after
Yeah,
that.
that's true.
This
True.
one, I was, I
Yeah.
guess I have a bit of a sore feelings here because I feel like I've got this fight stolen from me because this is one of the best fights in the UFC right now. Like an up and coming, really exciting boxer against the GOAT of the division, possibly. No offense to Mighty Mouse, but Pantoja is right up there. So to see it end this way, really
Yeah,
sad.
and I think
Yeah.
I'm sorry
No,
to
go ahead, go ahead.
again to interrupt. Just that I think that in terms of GOAT status, I think that Pantoja winning clearly against Van, I think that probably puts him as the GOAT of the division because I just rate Van, I just rate Joshua Van so highly, having watched a lot of footage, earlier what he has done. So
Yeah, totally.
I definitely think that this was a really important fight for Pantoja's legacy as
But
well.
yeah, but some people, us, I'm not going to call us hardcores, but we enjoy the sport and we do love a Pantoja fight. But I know that there are a few casuals who find it a bit boring. And like I said before, against Kekar France, it is predictable because he just wins every time. So to get a bit of a refresh, what they were speaking of, what Dana was speaking of anyway, was going to Japan and putting Joshua Van in there against Tatsuro Taira, who of course got a win against Brandon Moreno on the same card
Yeah,
for the title,
yeah,
and to get cash a bit of that Japanese audience as well, and build some hype there. And I'm all for that to take the UFC to different part of the where it hasn't really been since like a lot of years, basically. So maybe that can bring some new hype, bring in that Japanese fan base a bit more, which is of course a very positive thing. And the winner can fight Pantoja when he hopefully comes back, maybe in the summer sometime. Um, but of course, and we can't say anything else than that it was a very disappointing way to see a great lose a title fight, has to be said. Um,
yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, just unfortunate. It's almost like you said that it was almost stolen. I think you could say because this was basically if this fight would have gone the full length, I think it would have been a great fight. I don't know exactly how it would have ended. I'm a bit biased in favor of Van because I just like him so much as a fighter, but I also respect Pantoja a lot, and I also do like him a lot, and I think he gets a lot of disrespect. So in that way, I think it's really sad in terms of what happened because there's a lot of people who don't really respect Pantoja just because he's the flyweight
yeah.
king of the flyweight division, and that's not pulling the same respect as a I don't know as a heavyweight division champ. And so I think that there was already a bit of disrespect beforehand before for Pantoja.
Mm,
In terms of people not really recognizing who he was, maybe how good he was truly, and then this happening, it just opens up a lot of leeway for a lot of people to just say, "Oh, look at this, he's gotten knocked out by Joshua Van." No, that's not what happened. You don't know. You didn't watch it. You just looked up the result on Google basically.
exactly. You need
Yeah.
the context here. Um, but hopefully it can play out in an exciting way, nonetheless.
Yeah, I
This
don't even know why it says why it shouldn't even say that it's a knockout. You shouldn't say that officially.
No,
It should just
exactly.
say
It's a doctor stoppage.
just the stoppage due to exact doctor stoppage, and I don't know. Maybe they can't make it so that he wins. Then it doesn't need
Yeah,
to be
it might make it a no contest or a
it's something
draw.
like that. Yeah,
So, and I
I don't
get
know.
it.
Maybe it should have been that. But
Yeah, but it's
that's
also
another.
boring for the division, so I can get this. And like I said, if what
That's
ends up
true.
happening is Van against Tyra, possibly somewhere in Asia, um, uh, and then the winner fights Pantoja, that will gain a lot of hype, and especially the storyline there, where the young contender will fight him and he will try to get his belt back. Maybe that's some kind of fire he needs. Who knows? Um, but like we said, Tyra obviously having a very impressive performance, knocking out Brennan Moreno round two. And just before that, honorable mention to Henry Cejudo, one of the greatest ever, of course, hanging up the gloves and retiring as well on the last card. But
Yeah, of
that's
course.
the yeah, that's pretty much 2025 in terms of the UFC. Um, like we've been leaning to here, we are gonna do an basically a segment where we give out like um, end of year rewards for like fighter of the year, fighter of the year, finisher of the year, everything like that we've been discussing in this video. But I reckon that we can take that in a separate video. What do you think?
Yeah, that's true. We can probably make some sort of UFC awards video. I think would be great.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll prepare that. But it was a long one today, but we're called a podcast after all. So thank you guys for sticking through and catching up with 2025. Do you have anything to add before we end?
No, I mean I think that we're gonna get the next video out pretty soon as well, and we're gonna be, as we talked about, doing some awards for that one. To stay, look forward to that one. Stay tuned, is what I have to say. And thank you for watching.
Exactly. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you then.